watching Morning at NTV.
Well, good morning to you, and thank you so much for joining us here in Morning at NTV. As we come to the crown of today's conversations, we take note of World Epilepsy Day and how to deal with this particular condition. And of course, dispelling the myths. Is it treatable? Is it not treatable? If one gets it, what are the solutions? Do you isolate them? The stigma, etc., etc. But epilepsy, in fact, does affect almost every aspect of life and a person diagnosed with it. And for many people living with this condition, the stigma attached to the condition is more difficult to deal with than the condition itself. Misconceptions and myths often contribute to the stigma surrounding epilepsy. For example, many people assume that epilepsy is a mental illness, that it limits activities, or that it even stops people from having a full life. Others even think it's contagious. If you're next to a person who has the condition, it could be contagious. Well, to dispel those myths and tell us the realities and the truths of this condition, I'm joined by Ms. Sarah Nekesa, who is the Executive Director with Epilepsy Support Association, Uganda. Wow, that's very interesting. You're most welcome to the program, Ms. Nekesa.
Thank you so much.
Okay, so as we dive into the understanding of the condition, how is this condition caused?
It has so many causes. In children, it's poorly treated malaria sometimes. When children get malaria and it's not well treated at the right time, and the fevers keep on coming up and down, that goes to the brain of the child, that child. Maybe to go back, this is a condition of the brain. It's a neurological condition. So as this child continues to have fevers that are not managed well, in future this child is having a risk of having epilepsy. But also still at childbirth, mothers who are giving birth and at that point of push, and you cannot push, it is so painful, and the head is just around the right time to push, and you cannot push, so you're pressing the head and the brain of the child. That kid in future is at the risk of getting epilepsy. Still around childbirth, these mothers who have failed to push still, sometimes they use what they call vacuums, where they push in a machine and it holds the head of the baby. And this is a machine, so the scalp is so soft and it's pressing. It has no limit. So some babies get brain damages around that time. Still at birth, there are those babies who are very hyperactive. The baby has just come down, but it's fighting, it's crying, it's what. So if the nurses and the medical people who are there are not very careful, that kid can fall down. And so when they fall down, in most cases it's the head that goes down first, causing that damage on the brain of that baby. Another cause for epilepsy is alcohol and drug abuse. You know, when you get drunk, it's already showing that your brain is affected. And when you get high with drugs, still the brain is affected. So you cause the constant bombardment of those drugs to your brain can easily cause that damage on your brain. We have people who are living along the rivers. For example, in West Nile around Adjumani, we see so many people having epilepsy, children. So there is a fly which lays eggs along the river banks. So that fly is called the onchocerciasis. So that onco, when it lays those eggs and people pick water and they take, it goes to the brain. It causes that damage, and then accidents. When I talk about accidents, I really talk about the border riders. You've seen how they really get damages on their brain. All the time when they fall, it is the head that hits the ground. So every time they hit, even in other motor accidents, but as long as your head has had any kind of injury, impact. You don't know anything can happen.
Okay.
I always end with pork.
Okay, all right.
Yes.
That's a surprising one.
Yeah, poorly prepared pork.
Okay.
Poorly prepared pork to, if you've not prepared your pork to 100%. There is a cyst that only stays in pork, not in any other meats, but in pork. So that cyst lodges itself. It feels so comfortable in our brain. So it moves slowly and then it goes to your brain and it lodges there. So it feels comfortable there and then it starts
to eat up.
Yes, around there. So it causes that damage. And
Okay.
yeah.
So then it's safe to say that it's a disease that is not, it cannot be inherited, you know, through genetics?
We have seen some families that, you know, you see a mother or a father, but then they have 2 or 3 children with epilepsy. But this is not a known or researched fact, but it is there. We have seen those families that are, but we wonder what happens, much as epilepsy is not a contagious or genetic disease.
Okay, so from your own experience with, you know, the things that you have presented before us that could allude to one getting this nature of condition, what was your own experience? What led to you getting epilepsy, and how early was it detected, and therefore was it cured at the end of the day?
When I look at my childbirth, I don't know, I always ask my mom, what were the circumstances around when you were giving birth to me? She says she gave birth to me in the evening. The time of running to hospital, she could not reach hospital. And I think by that time she gave birth to me towards hospital. So now I don't know the circumstances around that area when she was giving birth to me. However, I didn't know anything. That's why I'm here to teach people to say, as long as you have a brain, you are susceptible to getting epilepsy.
So how old were you when you first realized it?
I was in senior 2. That was about 16 when I was in senior 2. So I got this seizure, and of course you don't experience it as a patient. So you get up and you find yourself, you're down, and it's funny. So I thought maybe I had not eaten and it was maybe
dizziness, drowsiness.
Yeah. So then after 2 days it happens again. And it wasn't now nice. So the school administration sends me home. And the parents are trying to say, but what is that? Maybe you're having malaria, maybe
witchcraft.
Witchcraft.
Yeah.
And no, at that point, they didn't say witchcraft. So they were thinking maybe I'm sick with malaria or something. So they take me to hospital. Now this person at the hospital was lucky, which is not the case with many patients of epilepsy. For him, he was able to see that this could be epileptic seizures. So he tells my parents the possibility of this being epileptic seizures. Then he says we watch it and we see. After another 1 month, it happens to me again, because epileptic seizures are always untriggered. You don't have malaria, you don't have anything, you just find yourself down. So it happens again, immediately they put me on medication. So I had this for almost 3 years, because I finished my senior 2, I finished my senior 3, actually senior 4, in VAC of senior 4. That's when I took a long spell without getting a seizure. But then I was now on my road to recovery, thanks to my parents. But at that point, there was a lot of sayings back and forth. This girl might be bewitched, this girl is having possessions of the demons, and you know, it is so demeaning to have epilepsy. It is so stigmatizing to have epilepsy.
And therefore, how would you speak to a family who have a member who's actually suffering from this condition? How would you advise that they deal with that member in that time?
The support of the family is key, is number 1. Because if the family accepts it, then they'll seek for help immediately. But the challenges are when the family is still thinking their child or their person is being bewitched. We have seen people wasting money going to witch doctors. And by the way, the witch doctors are also they are very bright people.
They're aware of such conditions
Some
existing.
of them use the medication we use medically, and then they pound it with their herbs, and then they give you to drink. So somehow you see controlled seizures, but again you're not on regulated kind of dosages. So there are those kinds of things that the family should always look out for.
Okay,
Yeah.
so speaking of dosages and the experience that you have shared with us with the medical facility that you attended, being able to quickly discern that perhaps this was your condition, what would be your address to health workers who deal with these problems or who deal with people who present such symptoms of a problem?
Now that is where it is very embarrassing sometimes in our community, in our country, to talk about our medical systems in Uganda. Not everybody can treat epilepsy the way it is right now, much as we are advocating that every nurse, every medical personnel should have some little knowledge about how to handle somebody with epilepsy. We have seen this stigma going through to even the caregivers now, the nurses. We have seen that you go, and because you are a person with epilepsy, you're treated last. And as a result, somebody gets seizures there, and as you're getting a seizure, instead you're pushed away because this medical personnel is not understanding your condition. So my word to the medical practitioners out there is to make sure that if a person with epilepsy approaches you, they are in dire need. Because when you have epilepsy, medication and drugs are your meal. Like HIV, epilepsy
Daily meal. And how many, like, is it 3 times a day, once a day? How
It depends on the diagnostics.
Okay.
It depends, because there are those who might just need one tablet in the morning, one tablet in the evening, depending on the severity
Okay.
of your condition. Yes.
All right. We're in a Valentine's season.
Yeah.
Some people are going to go down on their knees and ask the love of their lives to be
Yeah.
their lifetime partners.
Yeah.
But people always ignore medical checkups. So in the event that one of them is found to have epilepsy or even actually has it, how would you advise such a couple to handle the situation in fear of the children that are forthcoming and also management of the condition by the other partner?
Marriage, at this time, we discourage a lot for 2 lovers who have epilepsy to marry, because we want one to give support to the other. And the possibility, like I started and I said that there is that possibility that if the 2 parents have epilepsy, there is a chance of giving birth to a child with epilepsy.
Right.
So we really discourage 2 lovers to get into an affair and later on get married. However, marrying a person with epilepsy which is controlled, is very normal. I am wedded. I have children who are free. My husband loves me so much that if I stand here, nobody will ever know that
Right.
I ever had epilepsy. So a person who has a partner who has epilepsy, this should not be like a death sentence for this person. It is all about support, all about knowing how to manage. How are you going to handle if somebody has gotten a seizure? And life will continue very normally.
Okay.
Yeah.
You got the condition at earlier stages of your developmental life.
Yeah.
Therefore, we can't say that it being cured was not miraculous.
No.
But there's people who get this diagnosis in the later stages of their lives.
Yeah.
Is there hope of it being cured at whatever stage is diagnosed?
It is yes and no. I would say yes, because we've seen patients who are diagnosed with epilepsy at the age of about even 30. But because they had wasted a lot of time in other issues other than handling the case immediately. So the damage is too big. So right now you're just managing seizures, you're managing, but it may not go completely.
Okay.
But then when on the onset, if somebody realizes that this is epilepsy, there is a very high chance of somebody going without seizures for a very long time.
Okay, final question.
Yeah.
As one can walk into the medical facility and ask for an HIV test, can I walk into a medical facility and ask for an epileptic test?
No, because it's not a blood issue, it's a brain issue.
Okay.
However, you can do a brain scan. We do brain scans, we do EEGs, we do CT scans, where they can actually find where that damage is, particularly where it is, and also where how the electro activities are happening in your brain. So yes, it can be done through a scan, but not through a test.
All right. Yeah. Madam Nekesa, in your closing remarks as the support association here in Uganda focusing on epilepsy, what word of encouragement do you have to our audience?
I would say that having epilepsy is not a death sentence, and having epilepsy should actually make you more vigilant with what you are, and should go and seek for help. And to the families out there, if you have a child with epilepsy, if you have a relative with epilepsy, anybody, a person in the community where you live with epilepsy, please help this person. They are not outcasts, because epilepsy is not a contagious disease. Epilepsy, I can't pass my brain to you. So it's all about the community kind of help to people with epilepsy. That's what I can pass on to the people watching us. Right? Yeah.
All right. Thank you so much, Madam Sarah Nekesa, who is Executive Director with Epilepsy Support Association here in Uganda. And of course, you can search them out on social media to be able to get their services and the help that you need for your loved one. Now, that brings us to the conclusion of Morning at NTV Monday's edition. As you do have the countdown, the pressure is on for red, black, white, etc. At the end of the day, may love be embedded in every single thing that you touch, think, and do. Have yourselves a wonderful day. On behalf of Chris Igeni and myself, Priscilla, Regina, Naloga, until we meet tomorrow, blessed day.